1 Corinthians chapter 4, verses 1 through 5. This, then, is how you ought to regard us, as servants of Christ, and as those entrusted with the mysteries God has revealed. Now it is required that those who have been given a trust must prove faithful. I care very little if I am judged by you or by any human court. Indeed, I do not even judge myself. My conscience is clear. But that does not make me innocent. It is the Lord who judges me. Therefore, judge nothing before the appointed time. Wait until the Lord comes. He will bring to light what is hidden in darkness and expose the motives of the heart. At that time, each will receive their praise from God. So Paul is talking about this, as we've already gotten into in chapter 3, this bema seat. He's also talking about apostleship. He's talking about a number of different things, and so we'll kind of go into this. The major one, of course, is judge. So just at the outset, let's go ahead and unpack this word judge. Let's just find it. So we see it first in verse 2. I don't care if I'm judged by you. I don't even to judge myself. Another important one. My conscience is clear, but that does not make me innocent. It is the Lord who judges me. Therefore, judge nothing before the appointed time. Wait until the Lord comes, so bring to light what is hidden in darkness and expose the motives of the heart. So 4 times the word judge is here in this passage, and it's clearly the main theme of the text, and we'll get into that. But let's begin up here in verse 1. This then is how you ought to regard us. What is this, right? We'll have to just ask that question immediately. In what way are we to regard us? And then secondly, who is us, right? And we'll kind of find out, through this, we could say that he's talking about Apollos, Cephas, and himself. And really, by extension, as we'll see as we go through this text and other texts, he's really speaking of the apostles. But anyways, as he says us, this is how you ought to regard us. This is regard how you ought to think about us, how you ought to measure us. Servants of Christ and those entrusted with the mysteries God has revealed. The mysteries God has revealed. Servants, that's the role, right? Servants, and servants have a master. Who is the master of the apostles? Servants of Christ. They belong to Christ. Christ is the boss. Christ is the one telling them what to do. And every servant is given a specific duty. What is theirs? They are entrusted with the mysteries God has revealed. So not mysteries that God hasn't revealed, right? This is important here. The mysteries that God has revealed. We want to understand that Paul isn't unpacking something that God hasn't given to his people. These are the mysteries that God has revealed. They are simply those entrusted with them. And as any servant, right? As any servant, they must be faithful. So here in 2, he breaks into this new kind of, not new. It's very much building on what just came before it. Now it is required that those, and who's the those? Well, it's answered right here, who have been given a trust must prove faithful. Those who've been given a trust would be servants entrusted with the mysteries of God, right? So the servants who are entrusted in any situation, anyone who has been given a trust must prove faithful. So Paul says, you ought to regard us, the apostles, as servants who have been entrusted with the mysteries of God, and it's our job to prove faithful. Faithful to whom, right? Faithful to whom? To God, to Christ, their master. It's not their job to be faithful towards us. It's their job to be faithful towards God. Which is why Paul says here, I care very little if I am judged by you or by any human court. Wow. So this is now we're getting into this piece about judging, and we're going to make a couple notes here as we go through, but just let's understand why he is saying this. I care very little if I am judged by, not period, but judged by you or by any human court. Now, Paul has just put these two judges on the same level, the human court and the Corinthian people. And part of that is because the Corinthians have been operating on the human court's wisdom, by man's wisdom. And so that's part of it. But the main piece is that you and human court have something in common. They're both humans. And who is Paul's judge? Paul's judge is Christ, God, not human courts, not the people. So that's why he doesn't care if he's judged by them. He doesn't care because they're not the ones who have given him trust. They're not the ones that he must prove faithful to. He's got to prove faithful to God, not to the human court. So their opinions of him don't very much matter. And I say opinion because the word judge for number 1, for number 2, and for number 3 are all a word in the Greek that's anakrino. So you have this kind of word krino, which is to judge, and they add this prefix to it named ana. So you have this word anakrino for 1, 2, and 3. And what it means is to examine. So Paul doesn't say that I don't care if I'm judged in an absolute sort of way. Well, he says, I don't care if I'm even examined. I don't even care if you're looking at me and trying to weigh me and consider me. That doesn't even matter to me. This number 4 judge, sorry. Oh, my fat fingers are causing problems. Anyways, the other word, krino, and this is what shows up in 4, is to pronounce a judgment. It's to make an absolute judgment. And so as we go through this, and if you have an NASB Bible, it'll say for 1, 2, and 3, it'll say examine, and then 4 will be judge, or pronounce judgment. And that's to just kind of highlight the difference between this word anakrino and krino. So he says, I don't care if I'm judged, I'm examined by you or any human court. And he's going to continue this line of thinking. Indeed, he's about to raise the stakes here. I do not even judge myself. Paul says he doesn't even examine himself. Why? Again, because Paul isn't his own judge. God is, right? He's got to be faithful, but he can't be the measure of his own faithfulness. And that isn't to say that, that we shouldn't have any self-examination. In the next line, he tells us why he doesn't judge himself. My conscience is clear. Well, if your conscience is telling you that you're doing something wrong, obviously you should change. But if your conscience is truly clear, then there's not great value in self-examination at this point. Your sin is going to be in a place that is going to be very hard for you to find. And so we can take self-examination too far, and when our conscience is clear, we can berate our conscience, we can berate ourselves, and overwhelm ourselves with a sense of guilt that shouldn't be there. So there does come a point when examination is not as fruitful. But it's not for the immature believer. For the immature believer, a lot of self-examination is good. That's why Paul tells them to examine themselves, consider themselves. What Paul is talking about here is this is now a mature believer. That whole work of self-examination, there's a better thing to do with our time. And we'll see as we go through this. My conscience is clear, but that does not make me innocent. So he's not saying that he's not guilty. He's just saying, I can't find the guilt. If I could find it, I would have rooted it out. But I just can't see it in myself. And that's not coming from pride, right? This is not pride. This is a humble statement. He's like, my conscience is clear. I'm really trying to do my best here. But that does not make me innocent. It is the Lord who judges me. And again, it gets back to he's been entrusted to these mysteries of God. So examination, it is the Lord who examines me, therefore, and here comes the command, right? So there's one, this is how you ought to regard us. That's command number 1. Over here, therefore, judge nothing is command number 2. There's 2 commands. Here's command number 1. Here's command number 2. Therefore, judge nothing. And this is the word krino here, without the prefix. And it means to cast like a final judgment. Therefore, don't pronounce judgment before the appointed time. Wait until the Lord comes. And it's very similar here to like not taking revenge, because revenge belongs to the Lord. Here, it's the final judgment. Don't pronounce final judgments. That belongs to the Lord. Wait until the Lord comes. Why? Because he's going to bring to light what is hidden in darkness. What the conscience can't perceive. Remember that the conscience is not the Holy Spirit. The unbelievers have a conscience, right? We all have a little moral compass inside, but the conscience isn't perfect. So the conscience is going to have something, but the Lord will bring it to light. He's going to reveal what's hidden in darkness and expose the motives of the heart. And this is what we do want to be paying attention to in ourselves. What are our motivations? I think Paul is in such a place where his motivations, according to his conscience, are always in the right place. He's always trying to serve the Lord and do the right thing. He's gotten to a place where he's not so much worried about the don'ts of the Christian life. And now he's more focused on the do's. And I think there is a scale from immaturity to maturity here, where as we mature in the Christian faith, we move from don'ts to do's. We stop getting in that place of don't do this, don't do that, don't do this, don't do that. Instead, we're just focused on that prize, focused on Christ, focused on his glory. And that's what God's going to expose. He's going to expose the motives of the heart. He's going to look at why we did anything. And as we saw in the preceding verses, there's good materials and there's poor materials, and that's going to be revealed. And in this whole passage, we get to the point where we're thinking that Paul might be saying something about judgment, about something bad that could happen. And yet it ends with this: at that time, right, which is the day that the Lord comes, when he's going to bring everything to light, when he's going to expose the matters of the heart, at that time, each will receive their praise from God. And so we see that fundamentally, this text, where it's about judging, we have such a negative view of that word. And yet, what do we see at the end? That this judgment is not for curse. This judgment is not for punishment. This judgment is for reward, for praises from the Lord. Brothers and sisters, dear believers, we have nothing to fear about our future judgment. It is a judgment of reward. Their only fear that we might have is that we might work and labor in this life in such a way that we have very little reward, even though we expended much effort. So let's do our best to make sure that the motives of our hearts are correct, that we might do everything, no matter how big or small, for the Lord, so that one day we will all receive praise from God, and that it will be a rich reward. Let's all work for that. Amen.